Welcome to the Boschcast with James Boschman and Denise Young, where we talk about Manitoba real estate and everything else that's on our minds. What's going on, everybody? It's James Boschman and
Denise Young
with the Boschman team. And it's been a long time since we've done a podcast together.
Yeah.
I think the last one, I had done one with Addison, and we made some changes and joined a new cloud-based brokerage, which has been pretty cool. And yeah, a lot of things happened since the last time we were on here. A lot of things moving and shaking in the market, and another interest rate increase, which is not so super fun.
Right.
But yeah, let's start this off and kind of talk about what's going on. I don't have any jokes today, so next week I'll have some.
Sure.
I was not prepared for that. But yeah, so just anecdotally, how are you feeling right now about the market? Like, boots on the ground. I know that you've sold some houses on the buying end.
Yeah. I feel like it's still a mixed bag out there. Like there's definitely some areas that are absolutely crazy going into, multiple offers. I mean, I was definitely part of those.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's lots of houses that I'm showing that are well beyond offer date, and you could definitely pick them up for less than asking. And often we say, oh, the South is always crazy. You know what? I am showing houses in St. Vital that are like at day 29, day 56, right? Like,
Yeah.
It's not just the South that's crazy, and it's not
Mm-hmm.
just the South that has houses sitting.
Right.
So it's a huge mixed bag right now.
Yeah. I'm finding that, a house that's positioned correctly in the market.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, with an offer date. So positioned correctly might mean like undervalue the house to try to get multiple offers.
Right.
Like those are getting, a fair amount of offers. I showed one in Fraser's Grove, and Fraser's Grove is always, been very attractive area.
For sure.
And it ended up getting 8 offers. I don't know what it sold for, but average what I'm seeing from offer dates, if they don't sell unconditionally on offer night, then chances are they have at least a financing condition.
Yeah.
What I'm noticing is anywhere between 30 to 60, sometimes about 80 grand over list price, depending on the property. But it's very house dependent. It's not like every house
dependent. Yeah. I am also finding it more risky to take an unconditional offer, because I'm finding these pre-approvals mean less and less right now. A lot of the banks are basically saying, okay, well, I'm going to pre-approve you at this rate, up to this amount, but you could probably go up to this amount, but we won't be able to know for sure what rate we can give you until we submit your offer.
Mm-hmm.
And that's causing some sketchiness, which is kind of scary for accepting an unconditional offer, because you won't know if it's a good financing until it's too late.
Right. Yeah. So even if you're looking at an offer with no financing condition,
I'd be asking for a letter to go with that.
Yeah, ask for a letter.
Yeah.
Same on the buying side. If you're in the position where you feel confident that you can write an offer without a condition of financing, make sure that you get all of your ducks in a row ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
To try to avoid, because like Denise said, like, we're seeing banks that are giving like literally written pre-approval letters.
Yeah, and then declining people.
And to me, that's not a real pre-approval.
No.
A real pre-approval is like you're pulling everything. You're digging into the weeds to try to figure out the whole situation, and doing all of that stuff ahead of time, so that when you give a letter, this is as good as gold. You just got to go out and find the property. And I'm seeing a lot more appraisals coming in now. People are being a little bit more fussy on the appraisal side, even in the new construction stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas before they didn't really, appraisers didn't really have a need to call me for questions. But I'm noticing on new construction, even though, we've got like 2 years worth of comparables, the appraisers are phoning, asking, what kind of features and benefits does this house have to warrant the sale price, which tells me that, they're probably under pressure from the lenders as well.
Right. Yeah.
So, but yeah, so still seeing, some houses going into multiple offers, but then some houses, sitting on the market for a little while. And
yeah, and very nice houses in themselves, right? Like,
yeah,
like I couldn't, the few that I'm thinking of, I couldn't pull a good reason other than they were priced fair, instead of underpriced, maybe.
Yeah.
Right.
I think a lot of that is, heading into the summer months. Like if we go back to pre-COVID times, this is normally a time where we see more inventory for people to look at. And I think that's part of this equation, is that, I'm noticing, instead of looking at, 2 houses or 3 houses in a neighborhood, and you've got like, 30 cards on the table from other showings that have been through the property before you. Now there's, 6 to 10 houses that you can look at, right? And so buyers are kind of back to that, looking at everything and then making a decision based on value. And, so that's why it's, even though, we're still technically in a decent market for selling, it's more important than ever before, especially more important than it was during the COVID years, to make sure that your house looks pristine, that you've done everything that you can possibly do to make that house appealing for, the buyers. Because if they have more options to look at, and there's something that's a little bit nicer than yours, they might write an offer on that one, rather than writing an offer on yours. And if both have an offer date, that house might get, 6 offers, and you might get 1 or 2. So, yeah. So, but, yeah, so that's just what I think we're kind of seeing anecdotally. I think that we're gonna, obviously June 7th, this podcast is June 9th. So just 2 days ago, Bank of Canada shocked Canadians by raising their benchmark rate to 4.75. So they raised it 25 basis points. And I was listening to a podcast the other day where they had an economist on, who is one of 25 well-known economists in Canada. And he was saying that 23 out of 25 economists in Canada predicted that the Bank of Canada would not raise rates.
Yeah.
And they did. So that tells the markets. So the fact that the Bank of Canada, they caught everybody off guard, means that it was probably a last minute decision for them. Because normally what happens is the Bank of Canada will give some sort of rhetoric to prepare not just, the public, but prepare markets in general that there might be a rate hike coming. And they didn't do that. Right. And there was no talks, there was no rhetoric, there wasn't even a press conference after they did it. So that leads people to believe that, this is a last minute decision by Tiff Macklem, Bank of Canada governor, to essentially pull out a baseball bat and, try to whack-a-mole inflation, you know, try to beat it down to their target.
Yeah.
And Krista Freeland came out saying, she had like a little presser, like, the press were kind of asking her a bunch of questions and were really concerned about their decision. And she was saying, well, GDP is higher than what they expected. And, job growth is higher than they expected. The inflation numbers were a lot higher than they expected, that they wanted them to be. I don't think so number one, they look at lagging data. So they're using data from a report that came out in April. Well, we're in June now. So if they're looking at data like a rise in activity in April, well, that's seasonal activity. Most people could look at that and say, well, yeah, I mean, buyers get, really antsy. They want to get out and buy stuff in spring market, especially when we've just gone through 2 years worth of COVID where, people couldn't do the things. They couldn't travel. They couldn't, do all these things. And now people are going out to restaurants again, and they're, we're living our lives kind of, back to normal-ish. And so there's this big like spring burst of demand. And I think that the data that they were using in April could have been, an anomaly. But I think by them raising 25 basis points, it's like punishment for people. You shouldn't have gone out and spent money. You shouldn't have borrowed money. You shouldn't have, you should be more frugal and, help us out. And
April's also when everyone's spending their tax returns.
Oh, exactly.
Right? Like, I think of all like the people I know that are like single moms, tight budgets, don't have a lot, throughout the year. They count on those tax returns to be able to buy like new bedding and new clothes for the kids and all that stuff. So yeah, there is an influx of spending in April for sure every year. That should be expected.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I think, like, in terms of our market, I think that it seems like these rate increases, they take a little bit of time to stick. Sure. And in the short term, there's the sentiment. So like buyers in the market are like, oh, well, what's going to happen? They keep raising rates, and you get that, those buyers who are pre-approved prior to the rate hike, they're
going to rush to buy something now.
Yeah, their interest rate was locked in for a certain period of time, be it 60, 90, 120 days, whatever it is. Yeah. And now they're going to, race out and try to get something to try to beat that rate increase. Because if they don't buy something in that period of time, then they're going to be subject to the new rate. Right. And there's some even further speculation by economists that are saying, well, if they're bringing out the baseball bat now, then this might be another hiking cycle. So, the next Bank of Canada date is in July, and then I think they have one in September. And so people are like, well, what are they going to do? Are they going to keep going until, something breaks? And we really don't know. But, my theory is that, because the Bank of Canada they're pretty adamant that they want to bring inflation down to 3% over the summertime. And I think that these little incremental increases will do that. It's like turning the screws just a little bit more to squeeze and squeeze and squeeze for people not to spend. But I think that we're probably not going to get down to their 2% target until the first quarter, maybe the end of the first quarter next year. Like they're talking about this higher for longer. Mm-hmm. So I think because the data is lagging and they're relying on lagging data, it's probably going to be a while before these rates come down.
Right.
Like they might even go up a little bit before they come down. Mm-hmm. So if their target is like 2% by the end of Q1 of next year, like the inflation down to 2%, We
Mhm.
likely won't see rates come down until Q3 or Q4 of next year. I would say Q4 of next year, because if they're relying on lagging data, then they're probably going to want, if inflation does hit a 2% target next year and there's no recession, then they're probably going to want to see um, that play out for a period of time before they start dropping rates.
Right.
And that might take us into, the tail end of next year. So if people are, on the fence, rates probably won't get any better um, for a long time. So, if you're thinking about getting into the market or thinking about purchasing, um, and you need to do it now, I would recommend that you do it now, because even though there are still some houses selling in multiple offers, um, like Denise and I said, like, there are houses that aren't as
Yeah.
well. So you could get lucky and, get a great deal or get into a great house in a prime area.
Mhm.
Also seeing that, some of the rural areas are not getting the same amount of activity that they did during COVID as well.
Yeah.
So it might be a good opportunity for people to get, some great value even outside of the city. Um, if you're a buyer. So, but you got updated 5-year fixed rate, like an average fixed rate. Hey, Denise.
Yeah, 5.29% is
Okay.
what Sue can pretty much offer.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
5.29. Yeah. Depending on the lender, depending on you as a borrower, 5.29% on a 5-year fixed. Um, so yeah. So obviously you got to qualify 2% over that. So you're qualifying at 7.29%, which could.
Actually, she had a qualifying rate on here. Let me just tell you what she had on here. The Bank of Canada qualifying rate is 5.25.
Okay.
Hmm,
Okay. Well, that's not bad.
that's not bad.
Hmm.
That's actually low. That's lower than what you're paying.
Yeah.
Hmm, that's interesting.
Hmm. I wonder if I haven't done too much digging into it, but I wonder if banks and lenders are talking about 40-year AMs, like 40-year amortizations now.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of those. And
Because ultimately, like, whether people admit it or not, or like it or not, the banks
right,
in this country, they run the show. And
right,
so if they feel like, um, lending rates have dropped, or, there's increase in defaults, they're going to collectively have influence over the decisions of the Bank of Canada, even though Bank of Canada would tell you otherwise. Uh,
hmm,
you know, our banks are they're centralized, and so they're heavily regulated, and you know that's why when we're seeing in the States these banks closing and stuff like that, people like rush to take their money out, and then they would go to another bank because all the banks are private. So they go to another bank and put their money in another bank. But here, if somebody heard that RBC was going under, for example, and everybody made a run on the banks and started taking money out and went to put it in, where do you take it? Like you put it in Scotia, you put it in TD, they're all the same. So you're not really protected that way. But so, and that being said, like, the banks have a lot of influence, and I think that like, they don't want to lose business, and I think that um, they're going to have some push and pull in this interest rate environment as well. And they have things that they can do behind the scenes to incentivize purchasers to qualify for financing and stuff like that,
right.
offer incentives and do all that kind of stuff. So,
Hmm.
but um, yeah, can I tell a quick story?
Yes,
Okay.
looking forward to this one.
Okay, so it's kind of a funny one. It doesn't the story doesn't involve, well, it doesn't really involve me, but it involves a home builder client who I'm sure he would be totally fine with me talking about the story, because we've talked about it with everybody. over the years. And it's just a funny story. So a few years ago, before COVID, I was selling for a builder who was doing a lot of stuff in building a lot of houses in the East Selkirk, the RM of St. Clements area. And he had projects kind of scattered, in different job sites all over the place. And, custom home builder. So, kind of a smaller company in a way. And a lot of the trades guys were in-house. And so what the builder did is he bought his own skid steer.
Yeah.
So for those listening, a skid steer is like a bobcat. They use it to, excavate basements. They use it to grade yards, spread gravel, backfill, all that kind of stuff. And, it was a huge cost savings for the builder to just go out and buy one because, instead of like hiring the skid steer companies to come out and do all the grading and stuff, they would just do it in-house. So the builder had a guy who worked for him who would do all this work. So part of, if you have a skid steer, you have to have a trailer to haul this thing. And then you have to have a truck that can pull the weight of a skid steer.
Right.
So what they would do is the builder would drop off the skid steer and the trailer at a site. And he'd put a trailer lock on it so that nobody could steal it.
Yeah.
And then the guy who was operating the skid steer could do what he needed to do on that site. And then they would use the truck to pull the trailer to another site. So they'd go like from site to site to site to site with this thing.
Yeah.
And so they had this idea, the builder had this idea because he wanted to know where the skid steer was going to be going from job to job. And, instead of relying on the in-house trades guy that was using the skid steer to do the grading, to call the builder every single time to say, hey, I'm done here. I'm taking it to this site, or I'm taking it to this site. The builder would basically tell him where he needed him to take the skid steer after he was done each job with the truck and with the trailer. And he put an air tag on the skid steer. An Apple AirTag is like a tracker. People use it on their luggage.
Luggage, yeah. My husband uses it in luggage, yeah.
And during the big shit show of all the airports and stuff.
Yeah.
Over the last few months, people putting AirTags in their luggage to try to find their lost luggage. So he was like, oh, this is really cool. I can see where my guys are taking my skid steer, and all he had to do was pull the app, open his app or whatever, and then he could see, okay, it's over on this site, and then he didn't really have to pick up the phone and call anybody. So unless there was an issue. Right. So on a Friday, skid steer had been parked at a certain site in East Selkirk. The builder decides to go to the lake for the weekend.
Yeah.
And just out of curiosity, he happens to I think his app was open or something, and he's looking at his app and he sees his skid steer moving up a highway.
Oh.
Traveling at a very high rate of speed.
Oh no.
He's like, what the heck? So he tries calling the guy on his crew that operates the skid steer, but he can't get hold of him. So then he calls his business partner, and he's like, hey, I thought the skid steer was supposed to be left at such and such property until Monday. Yeah, it is. Well, according to my Apple AirTag, it's traveling north on number 6 highway right now past Warren. And he's like, we don't have any jobs up that way. So then who's got this thing? So his business partner hops in the truck, drives to the site where it's supposed to be. Sure enough, it's gone.
Yeah.
Somebody took it. And he saw the trailer lock, like the hitch lock, was busted up on the ground. So somebody stole it, right?
Oh, yeah.
So they called the RCMP, and the RCMP said, okay, we'll keep tracking it, and we'll call it call somebody up that way and try to go track it down.
Yeah.
They didn't hear from the RCMP, and this thing kept going north and north and north, and ended up stopping in St. Laurent.
Okay.
I guess there's a gas station there.
Yeah.
And it was stopped there for quite a while. So the builder's business partner gets in his truck. He just starts driving,
Yeah.
like trying to get the RCMP out there, not really getting any response.
Oh no.
They weren't really they said they would actively try to find this thing, but they weren't. It's not like they were getting in their cars and chasing it down.
Right.
So business partner gets in his truck. He's chasing it down. So he's up number 6 highway. He's on the phone with the builder, and he's like, yeah, it's still stopped there. It's still there. It's still there. So it takes him however long to get up to St. Laurent. He sees it. It's in this parking lot.
Yeah.
So it's in the evening now, and getting dark. So he pulls into the parking lot. He sees his skid steer, sees his trailer there, and it's being towed by this truck, and it doesn't have any plate. There's no plates on the truck. There's just a temporary sticker in the window.
Yeah.
So he's out there taking pictures. He's fully expecting somebody to come run out and do something. Nobody came out. So he had the key. So they always take the key out of the skid steer, and it was all locked up. So these guys didn't even have a key that stole it. They didn't have a key to get into it.
I figure they'll deal with that later.
Yeah. So he had the key with him. So he unhooks the trailer.
Yeah.
Backs it up, and then gets in the skid steer, starts it up, and instead of going backwards down the ramp, he goes forwards. And what he did is he took the bucket and he put the bucket down into the truck box and locked the truck there.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And he pushed down so hard on the truck box that the whole box just went brrr.
Yeah.
And the wheels of the truck were rubbing inside the wheel wells. And then the bucket was up high, so I guess he was able to open the door to get out. And he takes the key out, shuts it off, puts everything in lock, and then proceeds to walk around and try to find this guy whoever stole this thing. And you couldn't find him anywhere. And he was talking to different people. He's like, do you know who was driving this truck? Nobody knew. Wow. And finally the RCMP shows up.
Yeah.
And truck was stolen. Obviously the trailer skid steer was stolen.
Yeah.
And they just so happened to steal a truck with no plates that had a temporary sticker on it. That and I guess the truck was barely able to tow the trailer. It had a hitch, and all, but it wasn't really
capable.
Yeah. So they figured they probably had a really hard time towing this thing, and they just kind of ditched it there. But still to this day haven't found the people who stole it. But the moral is, if you're a tradesperson out there and you've got a lot of sites on the go, Apple AirTags, great investment. You can order them on wherever, Amazon, Apple, and stick them on all your equipment and get the app so that you can track where your equipment is going.
Yeah, and if you're not an iPhone user, I'm sure the Google ones would work too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I just thought that was so funny.
Yeah.
Thank God for the Apple AirTag.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to think of uses how I could use them, but I don't think we really have equipment or stuff that necessarily goes missing. You can stick them on keys of listings maybe, so that if an agent forgets to put it back.
There's a good one. There you go. Yeah. Yeah.
I wish you could have them where it sends out an electrical shock. The person, if you push a button, they just get electrocuted. But
I'd like to put them on my open house signs in Lorette because they keep blowing away down the highway and then I can never find them.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So,
although those are only $15 at least to replace, but
yeah.
But yeah, how many times have I replaced those signs?
Yeah. But yeah, I'm just thinking, like, if you're a home builder, if you're in construction, you got expensive tools, equipment.
Expensive stuff. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
air
That's a
tags are
great.
great little investment. And
Yeah,
you can like hide them on the machine so that, they're not visible. People aren't going to come and pick them off or pull them off or steal them.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, it's like a little GPS tracker.
yeah, exactly. I know I see a lot of guys holding their wallet instead of having them in their pockets.
Mm-hmm.
And my stepdad is one of them. And he tends to put his wallet down, like, on the tailgate of the truck or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, my mom did buy him one for his wallet so that, because like he'll leave it in crazy places, and,
Yeah.
and then he's like, "Where's my wallet?"
Exactly. Yeah.
That's a pain in the ass to replace. So
Yeah. Pretty soon we'll have them embedded in our body, I'm sure.
Right.
Like,
yeah. I know. I've joked about shoving one on our dogs, but just
Put one on their collar.
attaching it to their underbelly.
Yeah.
Well,
So
yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I know that they have specific ones for dogs, but yeah, I'm like an Apple user myself, so like I'm like, oh, I like the idea of having the AirTag, and then I just don't need another app.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, James uses it for his luggage, and he said like it's kind of wild at the airport because it actually makes you worry more because it looks like your luggage is nowhere near the plane for the longest time, and then once you are like sitting on the plane, suddenly your luggage is there. Yeah. And so he's like, yeah, no, it actually made me worry more. But on those times when they actually lose your luggage, it would be nice because then you can tell them where it is. Although I hear, several people I know, they still lost their luggage with the Apple AirTag, and they don't do anything about it.
Yeah.
So even though you can say, yeah, my luggage is sitting in New York,
they're like, okay, so what?
Yeah. It's like, okay, well, I guess we'll see if it ends up here.
Yeah.
Like they don't do anything.
Yeah.
So now you know where it is, but there's nothing you can do.
Yeah. Even if you have luggage, like I'm just thinking, a lot of times when you go to a hotel, and if you're going to a city or some place, and then, like, you get off your plane and then you drive or take an Uber or take a cab to the hotel, and you're there before check-in.
Yeah, and they put it
I'm always like super worried about leaving my luggage with the concierge, or like with, they put it behind the desk, or they put it in that little room. And I'm like, what if somebody just walks in and takes it?
Well, not only that, but sometimes there's so many people's luggage in that room. And then I don't know if you've been to the ones where they have like, you can go in there and change and shower and all that stuff, but so can everybody else that has their luggage.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so what if someone else goes through my luggage?
Yeah.
I think I've seen those more in Mexico than in the States, but like, I just find like it's not very secure. I'm never very happy about it. Yeah. I never want to go too far away. Yeah.
Okay. That concludes my story.
So
let's talk about our topic today, or this week, which is the costs of buying a home in Manitoba. So we'll talk about like some of the common costs that are associated with purchasing. You want to take this one, Denise?
Sure.
Okay.
So I talked to the lawyers to just, have an update on the lawyers' fees. And I heard pretty much anything between $1,100 and $1,350 for lawyers' fees, plus the disbursements. Okay. And disbursements obviously can vary because it depends on if people want a survey or title insurance, which is cheaper, but, doesn't help you if you want to build a fence or a garage or anything like that.
Or I guess if you're buying a condo and you need to get a status certificate or something.
Yeah, exactly. And then, there's all the usual stuff like tax certificates, title searches, and tax adjustment and interest. So you're probably talking, I like to tack on $1,000 if you're not getting a survey just for that stuff. More depending on that tax adjustment, if they're not on tips, if the house wasn't on tips, that tax adjustment could be more.
Yeah.
And then of course the big one for buyers is LTT, land transfer tax.
Yeah.
On a $200,000, that's pretty low cost price of a house right now.
Yeah.
Let's go with a $400,000 house.
Yeah.
Is $5,720 for like $5,720.
Yeah.
And because of the, like, we can post that like how they come up with that number, because it's,
sliding scale.
It's a sliding scale. Yeah. And I find, like, 200,000 is 1,720, right? And 500,000 is 7,720. Like, it's such a, it goes up substantially after 300,000.
Yeah. I know there's a lot of different land transfer tax calculators online that you can find, and the one that the Rate Hub one.
Rate Hub is the one I like, because the Terranet one doesn't include the registration fee of $70. So it's not like, I feel like you have to remember to add that on, so it's not accurate.
Yeah.
Whereas Rate Hub already has that included in it, so I find that one is typically more accurate.
Yeah. So would it be fair to say that lawyer fees and land transfer tax could be around 2% of the purchase price?
Yeah, I've even had some mortgage brokers say that to up it to 2.5, just to have a little like buffer, in case, like, especially for the person who, wants the survey and all the other extras, I'll say, that you might need to account for. So having 2.5% of your purchase price available for closing costs would be a great idea. And the nice thing is if you do have a little extra in there, and there's always something that goes, I'll say, wrong after you take possession. So, like, my first house, the hot water tank went 7 days after possession.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
have a little buffer.
Yeah, it's nice to have that little buffer, because, then now, you're not scrambling to find money.
Yeah.
When money's usually pretty tight that first, few months in a new house and everything, right? Because you're moving costs, you're like, even to rent a truck or pay movers or whatever can get pricey. Yeah. And I find people tend to buy, new furniture or other new stuff for the new house, right?
Yeah. Get your locks changed.
Yeah, exactly. Get your locks changed. That's always a smart one to do, because you don't know who's
got a key kicking around.
Got a key, exactly. Just because the sellers gave you the keys that they had doesn't mean that, their brother-in-law doesn't still have a key, or
so when we
an old tenant has a key.
Yeah, when we moved into our place, it was an elderly couple that owned our place before us, and about 6 months or 8 months after, like, we didn't change the locks on our house, and the only reason is because we had they're very like unique door handles on our house. They're hard to find. They're from the 90s, and they're hard. You can't find ones like that anymore. Yeah. Our doors were painted, and they painted around them. Oh. So if we would have taken them off, it would have been like green and blue, matched. We would have had to repaint everything. So we were like, we'll just keep it for now.
And the locksmith couldn't like rekey the lock.
We didn't go that far.
Okay. You didn't check. Okay.
So we were living there for a while, and then neighbors on the one side, I was out just like cutting the grass or something. I can't remember what I was doing, but neighbors are on both sides of our house. They're a little older, and the guy comes over and he was like, so how are you liking the place? They're like, yeah, we really like it, and he said, yeah, the old neighbors were great. You guys are great, obviously, but the old neighbors were great. They were super quiet, but every once in a while they would go out to BC and they would ask us to come in and like feed their animals and stuff like that and take care of their place. place for them and check on it. And he was like, I'll be right back. I think I still have a key. So
oh my gosh. So the neighbor had the key.
Yeah. And then about a year later, his wife says, oh, I think we have another key. So she's like, we can keep it if you want. And then, if you guys are ever out of town or whatever, we can just come in. You tell us what we need to do or whatever, just for emergencies. And I was like, oh my gosh, how many freaking keys are out there? So yeah, really good idea. It is a
good idea so that you can control who has the keys.
Either get it rekeyed or just get a whole new set of locks.
New set of locks. I love that smart key system because if you buy say like 2-3 door handles, like our house has 3 different door handle or maybe 4. So you buy them and they come with different keys, but then you rekey them all to one, and then you have the extra keys if you have to rekey them again. Like all of, maybe I gave someone a key and now we don't want them to have access anymore. We could rekey them. And I have clients that have rental properties, right? And that is an awesome system for rental properties because then when you get rid of a tenant or a tenant moves out, you can quickly rekey without any cost, right? You're not incurring costs constantly of. Mm-hmm. Same with those coded, the keypads, right? Those are handy for that as well.
For sure.
But so some other costs of buying, I'd say like the maintenance and repairs, like I was saying. It's good to know what your budget would be for especially immediate repairs. Like, some of the houses I've seen lately, like, I don't think you could even move into them without like doing something immediately. And sometimes it's not necessarily something that, like one of my clients just bought a house that she has allergies and the house has carpet. So like that is going to be an immediate thing because of her allergies. It wouldn't have been an immediate thing for everybody.
Yeah.
Right. But because of her allergies, they're going to have to do that right away. And then it's good to have your pre-approval so that you know like what you can spend. I'm trying to remember why I put this down as, but it does help with, your budgeting, right? Like if you know what you can spend, then you know what you have to have for closing costs. And you can even, I'd say cash flow wise, even though like the deposit and the down payment are all part of that, what you're spending on, that's all cash flow that you need up front. So I would include that in cost to buy. So you need your 2.5% for closing costs, but you also need your 5 to 20%, depending on what you've decided on with the bank, how much you're putting down on the house. And that, $10,000 or more deposit that you're going to write a check for so that you can, get the house. Your deposit. So those are all good things to think about. So, long past are the days where $2,500 was enough to go out and buy a house. James is like, I don't remember those days at all.
I've had some clients who've tried writing offers with a $500 deposit. I'm like, guys.
I think when we bought our first house, I'm going to really age myself now. I'm pretty sure we wrote $100 deposit on our first house. I mean, our first house was $47,000. And like I'm pretty sure that's all we wrote. And then like closing costs and down payment, I think, I don't remember needing even $5,000. Right? Like, it was pittance. Like compared to now, it was barely anything. So it was a lot easier to buy a house at the age of 20 back then than it is now.
Right. No, that's funny. I can imagine buying a house for $47,000.
With $100 deposit. But I mean, in the 90s, stuff wasn't selling very quickly, right? So if people were happy to take an offer of anything, with anything on there, right? So,
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then, like you said, budgeting for like having a reserve fund in place in case there are some items that fail shortly after possession.
Yeah.
Big ones that I find lately, being on the buyer side, if you have a buyer or if there's a buyer that purchases a home that's been vacant for a little while,
Yeah.
if you think about like a house that's been newly renovated or a flip,
Yeah.
they've been sitting vacant for a long time. And, chances are the people who are selling the home, if it's a flip, probably bought it from, could have bought it from an estate sale or a power of attorney sale
Sure.
where, in order for that house to enter the probate and all that kind of stuff, like it probably was sitting vacant for a long time prior to them taking possession and then gutting it and then flipping it. So if a house sits for a long time before there's new ownership, plumbing can dry out.
Yeah.
And if it's in a mature area, you can have tree roots that, like, if there isn't constant sewer water going out to the street, and if you have like older lines, which is, very, very common, it's
Mm-hmm.
like every old home in an old area has old either clay lines or cast iron lines that are stuck together going out to the main sewer. You can get tree roots that grow in. And
Yeah.
so,
Even if the house isn't sitting, that happens. Like
right.
we used to have to do that on our house on Yale. Probably every 24 months, we had to have that cleared out just as a precaution, or we would have backup.
Yeah. So if you imagine like, a new home buyer taking possession of a house that's been decently renovated, it's not something they think about. And then they go to do, 10 loads of laundry in their new house and
Yeah.
they're running the dishwasher and all that kind of stuff right away.
Yeah.
Then if you have a plugged line because of tree roots growing in there,
Yeah.
you're getting a sewer back up.
Yeah.
So that's an expense that I would recommend people, if you're buying a new home, just have like a Roto-Rooter or one of these tree root companies come and just do like a once over possession day or just shortly after possession day, so you avoid any of that issue
Right.
later on. Because those are things that even a home inspection, they're not going to be able to scope a sewer line like that
Right.
to see if it's plugged.
Yeah. Very true.
Yeah, and then obviously budget for your utilities and your
Yes, all the hookups,
all the hookups.
like internet and cable and
Yeah,
or
if
whatever
you
you're
have
going
to
with.
purchase a new modem or anything like that, like
Yeah.
budget for those types of things.
Right.
But yeah, that's pretty detailed, I think.
I think so.
Yeah, and obviously, if anybody listening is a buyer or thinking about buying and they want more in-depth rundown of the costs, you can always reach out to us, and
Yeah, I have a nice form for that.
yeah, we can get you something.
Mm-hmm.
So last but not least, we'll shout out some local businesses, some flowers to some local businesses. I'll go first.
Sure.
So Tara and I went for dinner to Friskee Pearl.
Where's that?
Friskee Pearl, it's a restaurant in the old Earl's restaurant on Main Street.
Oh, is that we went in there? Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So it's owned by the owner of the King's Head.
Nice.
And apparently he is from the East Coast, grew up in like the Halifax, just outside of Halifax.
Okay.
And his parents, we talked to him, so we got the whole story. But
Sure.
super nice guy,
Yeah.
and really down to earth, and you can tell like he's a super hard worker. And his parents, I guess they export seafood from the East Coast, and so he gets the freshest seafood. Probably the freshest of any restaurant in Manitoba.
Interesting. I gotta go there.
So we went balls to the wall because
Yeah.
Karen and I, we love seafood and we love the East Coast.
Yeah.
So we had We had oysters, we had mussels, we had crab cakes, which were amazing. All real crab.
Yeah.
And then we had a whole lobster and it was freaking unreal.
Yeah.
And their drinks are really good too. Like they have some
Yeah.
really cool cocktails on the menu. I know it's not seafood, but their Brussels sprouts are the bomb.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Really, really good food, good people. It's a very large space. So it was, if you imagine the old Earls, like they
Yeah.
have a massive bar and then they have a huge dining room and then they have the patio outside. So
Yeah.
I was thinking like, how is this going to work? Like it's a new restaurant with such large square footage, but you go there, Friday evening, Saturday, it was packed in there.
Oh, good for them. Awesome.
Patio is great.
Yeah.
You go there for lunch. They have lobster rolls.
Yeah.
They have like salads. They have soups. They have clam chowder. Yeah, it was a great experience. Good food. Definitely go back.
Yeah.
And I'm stoked that it's just really exciting to see new restaurants take hold and be semi-successful again after COVID.
Right. Yeah.
There seems to be like a new renaissance of restaurants, which is
and that particular business owner, he worked really hard to not lay off his employees during COVID. Like they switched to a different business model than a restaurant, right? Like they were like packing up groceries and delivering groceries and stuff like that.
Yeah, like they were really King's Head pub.
Yeah,
almost wasn't a thing during COVID because they almost had to shut down. And
well, most restaurants did have to shut down for a good portion when we weren't. So in order to not lay off his employees, he actually switched to
grocery delivery.
Yeah, I thought it was genius. I know lots of businesses tried really hard not to lay off employees during COVID, but like as a restaurant owner, like I don't know too many restaurants that didn't have to lay off people for a portion of the time because they were forced to close.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I just found that really awesome. So yeah, that's definitely.
And they've hired Friskee Pearl. They've hired, I guess he was saying they've hired a bunch of Ukrainian refugees.
Oh wow!
And trained them up, and they have a lot of serving staff that they don't necessarily come from a serving background, but they're really, really good. And it's meant to be like when Tara and I went to the East Coast, when we were on Cape Breton Island, we went to this lobster supper hall. And it's like a massive communal space, really, really noisy, really loud.
Yeah.
And that's the way it's meant to be. That's like the vibe. It's just a lot of energy and like really, people are enjoying themselves. Friskee Pearl, they have live music in the lounge area, which is kind of cool. But so it has that like open air, people sitting close together, big groups, atmosphere. And they have this thing on their menu where you can buy around for the kitchen.
Wow.
So they're not, he said they're not getting juiced on the job, but like they do this thing if you buy around for the kitchen. I don't know how much it is. I can't remember, but you can essentially give them a tip. And when they get a tip, they have a bell and they ring it and then they go, they ring the bell and it's like super funny. And you hear them like, boom, 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 like stomping around back there.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool. So
that sounds fun.
I know what they're going for there. And like when Tara and I were on the East Coast, it was a vibe for sure. It was so fun. And that's what they're going for. And it's cool to see like Manitoba is such a landlocked province when it comes to seafood. It's nice to see like some good, fresh, really high quality seafood.
Yeah.
So
right on. Yeah.
That was my business of the week. Friskee Pearl.
Awesome. Well, I have two. We've tried to get out to the White Shell a few times in the last month, and Brereton Lake Lodge has amazing chicken fingers as well as a pickerel meal that are both very good. And Pinewood Lodge, they do have like a small like fast food menu, but they have awesome ice cream, a ton of other stuff. We always stop there. They're our go-to spot for like firewood and ice and everything, because we usually camp at Nudimic. And I don't want to put any store down, but I just always know that Pinewood Lodge is going to be open. They're open like every day of the year except for I think Christmas. So they have very consistent hours, right? So I just find like I just need to, if you're out there and you think, oh, I need to get something, I always just pick there because they're going to be open. And I grew up going to Brereton and Dorothy Lake, which is where Pinewood Lodge is. So I've been going to them for so many years, and even though both of them have new owners, those new owners still know who we are and treat us like even though I probably only go to the park, 3 to 5 times a year. Yeah. I'm not a regular out there. I'm not a cottage owner or anything, but, we walk in and she's like, oh no, Jameis, I don't have your, I can't remember what the heck the thing's even called. He always gets this cappuccino slushy thing at Pinewood Lodge. She's like, our machine is down. She's like, but can I try to make you a mocha milkshake? Oh yeah. Like she just knows right away, right? Like that's what he was there for and whatever. Cool. And anyway, so I'll just shout them both out because they're both awesome and at opposite ends of of her. But we usually try to make sure we go to both of them several times a year.
Oh my gosh, I love the white shell.
Yeah, so I know, me too. Yeah, it's such a beautiful part of Manitoba. Yeah. Very different than the rest of it.
I have to go for some hikes there soon. Go for a canoe ride. So cool. Well, I think that sums her up. So I will, if anybody has any questions, real estate related, if anybody needs help navigating through this interesting market, please reach out to one of us and we're always happy to help. And like, share, subscribe, helps with the algorithm and our business and is much appreciated. But we will catch you guys on the next one. I hope you guys have a great week and look forward to seeing you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye for now.